I've been asked to take part in a podcast in a couple of weeks about mindset. It's great to have been invited, and it really got me thinking about the kind of topics that might come up and what might I talk about. What's my current level of understanding about mindset and how it affects us? Now, in order to answer these questions to myself, I went through a very simple process that helped me to understand what I do actually know about this subject and what can I talk intelligently about. Very simple process, but actually so useful that I thought there might be areas that you could find it useful as well. Think of something that's important in your life, something that you're passionate about, and imagine that you've been asked to do a podcast about that subject, or that you're going to do a presentation in front of an audience, and start to think about what you might say. Now begin with the really basic questions. Let's say, for example, that you're really into positive thinking, you're a student of it, you're a big believer in it, and you've been asked to do a talk about the subject. One of the first questions might be, what is positive thinking? So how would you define it? And there's lots of ways you could do that. One possible way would be to say positive thinking is the art of seeing possibility instead of limitations. Or you could say positive thinking is the skill of being able to catch yourself when you're thinking in a pessimistic way and to be able to turn it around and think in a more positive way. Now, both of those definitions are true. Neither of them is complete. So there's lots of other ways that you could describe it as well. So how would you describe positive thinking in 1 or 2 sentences? And then why is it important? What are the key things that you need to know in order to be good at positive thinking? And what are the skills that you need to master? What are the building blocks? And what are some of the key obstacles that you've come across in your journey to become a more positive thinker? Now, these are really basic questions, but they're very important ones. When I started to ask myself questions like these about mindset, I found something really interesting, and this is what I think you might find useful as well. In every case, for every question I asked myself, the first answer that I came out with was either something that I'd read in a book, or it was something that I'd heard somebody else say about the subject. And the time that this becomes a really powerful exercise is when you go deeper than that and you ask yourself the question, what do I think? What is my opinion? What have I learned about this subject from experience that I didn't get from a book? And when you start taking it to that level, when you start asking yourself those questions, I think you're going to amaze yourself at some of the answers that you come out with. It seems to me that this is a really valuable exercise. This is about learning what you've learned about a subject, not what you've memorized about it. What are your experiences? What are the conclusions that you have come to? And if you were to do this today on a subject of your choice, and you were to do this again in a year's time, you will come out with different answers because you'll have learnt more. But if all that you're doing is quoting things that you've learned from a book, then a year from today, you're still going to be saying the same things that you say now. One of the subtlety that I found really useful was not to just think about this, to imagine that I'm doing it live right now, that the microphone's in front of me and I'm live on air doing a podcast, or there's an audience sitting in front of me. And that shifts it from being an intellectual exercise into figuring out, what do I actually know about this subject? What have I got deep in here about this subject? And it becomes a journey of self-discovery. And what was really exciting was, I know a lot about this subject, but I figured out at the same time, there's still a lot that I need to learn about it, and that's what makes it really exciting. And by the way, the definition that I came up with for what is mindset, and I think that this is my definition, if you know different, please let me know. The definition is, mindset is the ingredient that when it's present, allows people with average ability to be able to achieve extraordinary things. And it's the same ingredient that when it's not there, can lead people with extraordinary ability to sometimes achieve just average things. So what's your specialist subject? And imagine that you were going to do a podcast next week about it for 20 or 30 minutes. How would you do that? How would you take all of the knowledge, experience and wisdom that you've gained over the years and condense it into those few minutes in a way that's both meaningful and useful to other people? Try asking yourself some of the questions that we've talked about here and find out what you really know.